Hello there, people of the internet. I have heard this argument a couple of times based off of a couple of different firearms. People will say this gun is the best possible gun for the average gun owner, and everybody needs to own one. And it tends to be based around like a person's personal bias. Like, for example, the AR over here is the best possible gun, and everyone needs to own one. Like, the average person, this is the best gun that they can have. There's a lot of good arguments for something like this, and I understand, but we're gonna get into something else here in a second. Or they'll be like, no, something like the AK and 7.62 by 39 is the best possible go-to because of the similarities with 7.62 by 39 and 30-30, ballistically speaking, and the capabilities of shooters and XYZ, and this is a bomb-proof rifle that can go through anything, and it's the best gun ever, and the people that go through and tell me that this gun or that gun is the best gun for the average Joe, I gotta disagree if we're talking about something like an AR or an AK. Typically, whenever people are thinking of an AR or an AK, they're thinking of it in the sense of like a tactical standpoint. They're thinking of an end-of-the-world situation where they have to defend life and liberty against whatever force it is that they've come up with inside their minds, right? The average person doesn't have to deal with that. The average person isn't going to find themselves on a front line. The average person isn't trained in using an AR tactically or an AK tactically. The average person just isn't trained in using an AR or an AK. Now, if we're talking about firearms ownership, the AR, I think that's one of the most popular rifles out there in the United States as of right now. But the capabilities of the shooters that use those ARs, they are not using them near to the effectiveness that they could be used. Like, I get that they're a great platform, but have you seen most people that go out and play with their budget tier bottom of the barrel ARs? Oftentimes they don't have sights or scopes or red dots or anything on them, and if they do, then they are just zeroed good enough so they can nail garbage at 50 yards with it. Most people can't hit jack of anything beyond 50 yards. I'm being serious. Go to your public gun range and just look at the distances that most people can shoot. And that's just the people who have guns, who decide to go out and actually practice and train with them, although whether or not we would call that, actual training is, a little speculative, but in benefit of the doubt, that's just the people who go out and actually practice and train with the firearms. There's a tremendous amount of people out there who have guns in their closet that they've never even taken out to shoot or to see if they can be used. The average person is not going to be able to effectively use an AR or an AK to the actual extent that they would need to be used. They wouldn't be able to hit anything with an AR or an AK beyond 50 yards. Even if we had like a fairly competent shooter, even the people I see at my public gun range on a normal basis, they can't hit anything beyond 100 yards. Like the AR and the AK, those are 400-yard rifles, like, pretty gosh darn easily you can touch out into those distances with these guns. And anyone who's got just the most minute level of training with those rifles, especially if we're talking about something that has a zoomed optic to be able to hit those distances, one that is actually zeroed, which most of them on most of your rifles are not, so someone with just the most minor amount of training would be able to touch out of those distances with these guns, but most people don't have that minor amount of training. If you're going to argue the AR or the AK is best for the average Joe, no, it's not. The average Joe cannot effectively use those guns. My personal opinion, I think the best gun for the average Joe is going to be a shotgun. In the distances that most people can shoot at, birdshot, buckshot, and slug are absolutely within the realms of those distances. You have the power of the slug if you need it to handle whatever large game it is that you're going after. If you're going after small game, then you got the birdshot to where you don't just completely decimate whatever it is that you're going after. For the ranges of self-defense that most self-defense takes place at, which is like 7 yards, buckshot is 100% effective at those distances. Even out to like 100 yards. I watched a video by Iraq veteran 8888 where he tests the capabilities of the shotgun out at various distances, and buckshot was effective out at 100 yards, you could still hit your targets out there if you were using a full choke and some half-decent buckshot. If you go out and get the cheapest bottom-of-the-barrel stuff, then your range might be a little bit more limited. But at those distances where people could normally not hit anything with an AR, especially if we're talking about the sights that they zeroed for good enough to be able to plink with, plink garbage with at 50 yards, they have a much better chance of actually nailing their target if they were to use a shotgun that had some kind of spread on it. We actually saw efforts with the United States military to essentially adopt this concept of having multiple projectiles going downrange in addition to, well, in an effort to increase the accuracy and hit probability of whatever soldier it is that they were issuing it to. We saw that with them using their duplex bullets, which essentially was like a single 223 cartridge that had 2 bullets inside of it, 1 bullet right behind the actual primary bullet, and the bullet behind the other bullet would fly off in a little bit of a spread in comparison to the first bullet, which would go right where you were aiming. If you don't know what a duplex bullet is, I recommend looking it up because that is a really cool concept. But it's a concept that holds true because most people can't really hit anything beyond 100 yards. So if we're talking about a threat at that distance, then having something that sends a bunch of projectiles downrange versus one that hits right where you're aiming and the person can't aim, then that right there might be the best option. Not only that, but if you have someone who can aim, then you throw a slug inside of a shotgun like this, especially if you have a rifled barrel or potentially a rifled slug, you should be able to touch out with that thing out to about 300 yards. Again, reference that Iraq Veteran 8888 video where he does exactly that to show the effectiveness of the shotgun slug out at far distances. Not that most people would be able to shoot at those distances, because that is beyond the 100-yard capabilities of most people, which is beyond the 50-yard capabilities of most of those people that we're talking about. Just the capabilities of the shooter automatically have me lean towards the shotgun. The capabilities of the average shooter, or the average person who doesn't even shoot. If we're concerned about recoil, this right here is a 12-gauge shotgun. If you're concerned about recoil, go out and get yourself a 20-gauge shotgun, or go out and get yourself some reduced recoil buckshot, or something like that, to where the recoil is significantly more manageable. Now, there is an argument to be made where the average person should have a .22 long rifle, but I would argue that for the average person, this right here is one of those things where, yes, it is effective within the ranges that most people are capable of shooting, and you do have the cost effectiveness and whatnot, but anything that the .22 long rifle can do, the 12-gauge shotgun or the 20-gauge shotgun can also do it. Versus something like the .22 long rifle, you're limited to power, and you're limited to a lot of well, the .22 long rifle just has a lot of limitations behind it in comparison to the extreme versatility of that of a shotgun. Like, you can just use a shotgun for a good number of things, even if you want to choose something for home defense, although this is a horrible looking paint job on this shotgun. It's still going to send buckshot and slugs out of it pretty gosh darn effectively. But if you want something for self-defense inside your household, you can go out and get yourself something that has a shorter barrel on it, versus my Winchester 1897 there, which has a full-length barrel on it. But something like this right here would be quite good for a good number of things that most people would be encountering. You got your defense shotgun, or you got your hunting shotgun, or even times you have shotguns that you can just swap the barrel out on if you decide that you only want one singular shotgun. I think the shotgun, for all intents and purposes of what the average person is capable of and what the average person needs a firearm to be able to do, I think the shotgun is the best gun for the average person. Now, lots of people out there are going to disagree with me because they're like, no, you need something that you can touch out to 500 yards. Most people aren't touching out to 500 yards. You need something that can turn cover into concealment. Buckshot and slugs are pretty gosh darn effective at that. You need something that has, I don't know, a 30-round magazine inside of it. Most people don't need that. And if you're concerned about amount of projectiles going down range, 9-shot, double-aught buck, That's a fair amount of rounds going down range. If you have, the average shotgun probably holds, what, 6+1 shells? Maybe 5+1 shells? That times 9, you do the math. I don't know how many projectiles that actually is, but that's a fair amount of projectiles going down range. That's quite a bit of power going down range. I think that just because of what the average person needs a gun for, and what they can actually do with a gun, I think that the shotgun is going to be your best option. So thanks for watching, folks. I appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below has a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. You guys go off. Have yourself a fantastic day. I'll see you on the next episode.
Been a little while since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garen. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.